Welcome to the Secret History Channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. The last photograph of Tupac Shakur was taken in Las Vegas, Nevada on September 7, 1996, about 20 minutes before he passed away from severe injuries during an incident involving gunfire in the parking lot of the MGM Grand after a boxing event. German troops set fire to buildings in the Warsaw ghetto during the suppression of the uprising that occurred between April 19 and May 16, 1943. The flames swept through the narrow streets, forcing the resistance fighters to abandon improvised hideouts. Bunny Yeager, photographer and model, set up a camera on a tripod in her studio in Miami in 1955 to capture a self-portrait that showcased her dual talents. The last photograph of Elvis Presley was taken at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee at 12:28 a.m. on August 16, 1977, capturing the singer moments before his passing. Hans Langseth, born in Norway in 1846 and residing in the United States since 1867, set the record for the world's longest beard at 17 feet 6 inches, officially measured in 1927. Two men pose next to a giant snowman built in a residential courtyard in Istanbul in 1929. The snow sculpture was nearly 10 feet tall and was built by local residents during a rare snowstorm in the city. An African-American man stands alone watching a demonstration by a hostile group in Jackson, Mississippi in July 1950. The event gathered people wearing white hoods and carrying intimidating banners through the streets of downtown. Biafran fighters and Nigerian military forces face off along a rural road in 1968 during the conflict in southeastern Nigeria. This area was marked by the displacement of civilians and efforts to secure essential supplies. In Sydney, Australia, in June 1964, a fan so desperate to attract Paul McCartney's attention during a Beatles performance threw her special needs child toward the stage. Sophia Loren attends the Cannes Film Festival in Cannes, France, between April 26 and May 10, 1955, showcasing her international talent. The event brought together filmmakers and actors from various nationalities to present and award-selected productions. One of the last photographs of Al Capone with his wife May was captured in Miami around Christmas 1946. Two Armenian women pose with rifles in the Van region of the Ottoman Empire in 1895, preparing to defend their communities during the massacres of 1894 to 1896. A Muslim woman in Sarajevo covers the yellow star of her Jewish community neighbor with her own veil in 1941 as a form of protection against the restrictive laws that sought to isolate those wearing that symbol. Three soldiers, a German, a Soviet, and a Finn, sit together in an improvised shelter on the Finnish border in 1941 to talk about photography. A black woman shields a man from hate signs during a protest in Atlanta, United States in 1996. A man carries a sign in front of the Bankers Trust Company headquarters on Wall Street, New York City in 1932, during the Great Depression marked by bank failures and mass unemployment. A Finnish officer humorously offers Klubi 7 cigarettes to a statue of Lenin in Petrozavodsk on November 30, 1941. The scene took place during the Finnish occupation of the region and shows a lighthearted moment away from military operations. Loggers guided horses to drag a massive fir tree in the Cascade Mountains in Washington, navigating steep trails with skill and care. One of the first photographs used as news captures the arrest of a man on Rue de Rivoli in Paris, France, in 1847. The image was obtained through the daguerreotype process, which required long exposure times and resulted in unique silver plates. Children worked long hours in hazardous conditions in 1910. These images helped pass laws intended to protect children from the misuse of their labor. Lowell H. Smith and John P. Richter performed the first in-flight aerial refueling over San Diego, California on June 27, 1923. A flight attendant from Iranian Airways cuts a birthday cake for a colleague in a lounge at Tehran Airport in 1971. United States Army troops launched the Meuse-Argonne campaign in northeastern France on September 26, 1918, during the First World War. Bricklayers work on the construction of Stockholm City Hall on July 4, 1916, on Kungsholmen Island. The building, designed by Ragnar Östberg and inaugurated in 1923, is famous for its 106-meter tower and the Blue Hall. Henry Ford presented his experimental car in Dearborn, Michigan, in 1941. Built with plant-based materials like soybean fibers and henequen, and powered by biofuel derived from agricultural waste. A group of soldiers is gathered in a trench near Ypres, Belgium, in September 1914 during the early stages of the First World War. Albert Einstein and his wife, Elsa Einstein, pose for a studio portrait in Berlin, Germany, in 1930. This photo session was conducted during the couple's visits to scientific conferences in Europe. The albino gorilla known as Snowflake undergoes a veterinary examination at the Barcelona Zoo in March 1967. The care included assessment of vital signs and inspection of the fur to ensure his unique well-being. A stylish father pushes a baby carriage through the wide corridors between residential blocks in Moscow, Soviet Union, in 1975. These concrete buildings were part of a collective housing program that housed millions of urban families. A migrant family poses in a rural setting in Oklahoma, United States, in 1936 during the Great Depression. They wear tattered shoes and clothes and have traces of dirt on their faces, showing the financial hardships in the region affected by the Dust Bowl. A British sailor removes a shackle that had restricted the freedom of a worker at the port of Liverpool, England, in 1907. A military vehicle and its passengers stopped to admire the view at Multnomah Falls, Oregon, in 1918. The vehicle was part of a convoy traveling along the Columbia River Highway, which opened in 1916 to improve troop and supply traffic. A woman works spinning cotton on a manual wheel at a farm in Alabama, United States, around 1905. This artisanal practice was part of home textile production before the expansion of textile factories. Crew members of the Imperial Japanese Navy landed in Qingdao, a territory in China controlled by Germany, on August 27, 1914, initiating the siege that lasted until November 7, 1914. A motorized motorhome and its trailer were photographed along the Lincoln Highway in the United States in 1922. A young man in Times Square, New York City in 1912, writes the news of the Titanic tragedy on a board. He records information about the sinking that occurred on April 15, 1912, and the estimates of more than 1,500 people affected. Girls pose around a wood-burning stove while learning practical domestic skills in a home economics lab at a school in the United States in 1910. German soldiers surrendered to Soviet troops near Berlin in May 1945. The act marked the end of intense fighting on the Eastern Front and consolidated the end of the conflict. Children stand in line at a community shelter in New York City in 1933 to receive free soup and a slice of bread. This initiative was part of relief programs during the Great Depression, which was marked by mass unemployment between 1929 and 1939. A traveling bookmobile circulated along the rural roads of Kansas, United States, between 1942 and 1945, delivering hundreds of books to communities without access to permanent libraries. The chief of the Yakima Tribal Council visited his son, Corporal Bill Yallop, during shooting exercises at the Yakima Proving Ground in Washington in 1954. A geisha with freshly washed hair poses for a photograph in Kyoto, Japan, in 1905. The washing ritual preceded the application of natural oils and ornaments that composed the traditional hairstyle used in ceremonies and performances. Canadian soldiers participate in training exercises at a military camp in Alberta in the 1920s. The activities included marches with full gear and maneuver simulations on varied terrain. Engineer Karen Leadley works with analog computers at the General Dynamics Space Division in San Diego in 1964. These systems were essential for modeling rocket and satellite trajectories in real time. A young woman from Oaxaca, Mexico, participates in a traditional celebration wearing a typical outfit decorated with shell necklaces and flowers in her hair and holding a straw hat adorned with leaves. Apple II assembly lines at the Apple factory in Cupertino, California in the 1980s showed workers installing circuits, soldering components, and testing motherboards at ergonomic workstations. New York City was buried by the Great Blizzard of 1888 between March 11 and 14, with about 50 inches of snow accumulation and drifts up to 40 feet covering streets, streetcars, and homes. A coastal cypress tree fell onto the sidewalk in Pacific Grove, California in the 1950s. The fall occurred after a powerful storm hit the Pacific coast in November 1954, uprooting roots from the rocky soil along the shoreline. Seth Kinman, a hunter and trapper from California, poses seated in a chair made from grizzly bear hide in Sacramento in 1865. He presented the piece of furniture to President Andrew Johnson that year as a demonstration of gratitude and rustic creativity. Brigitte Bardot poses in Venice, Italy in 1953 during the Venice Film Festival, drawing international attention for her striking style. Jeffrey Dahmer poses in uniform at a military base in Westphalia, West Germany in 1979. His excessive alcohol consumption contributed to his discharge from the armed forces in 1981. He had already been involved in a fatal episode in 1978. The 1 millionth 1965 Pontiac Bonneville convertible rolled off the GM assembly line in Arlington, Texas in 1965. This milestone celebrated the strong demand for stylish vehicles and the growth of the American automotive industry in the 1960s. David Bowie performed for an estimated crowd of 40,000 people in Central Park, New York City on September 18, 1983, during the Sirius Moonlight Tour. The Speyer wine bottle was unearthed in 1867 from a Roman tomb near Speyer, Germany, and is estimated to date back to around 350 AD, making it approximately 1,680 years old. The Series 90 Hartmann Cabriolet was photographed during an automobile exhibition in Berlin, Germany in 1932. A family poses for a photo in Boston, Massachusetts during the Spanish flu in 1918, with everyone wearing cloth masks, including the cat on the father's lap. Indeed, sodas served in glass bottles from these vintage-style machines offered a fresher and cleaner taste. Glass does not retain odors or unwanted flavors and keeps the beverage cold for a longer time. A man balances on a plank at the edge of a skyscraper in Manhattan, United States in 1939, walking dozens of feet above the ground with no visible safety device. Alfred Hitchcock traveled to the banks of the Thames River in London, United Kingdom, in 1958 looking for inspiration for his next films. A Bedouin mother poses in front of a fabric tent in the desert region of Najd, Saudi Arabia, in 1948. She is part of a nomadic community that travels long distances in search of pastures and water for their camel herds. Sunset Boulevard in Beverly Hills, California, United States, was photographed in 1925 during the early stages of the area's development. Families move into their new homes in Lakewood, California, on Moving Day in 1953. This event marked the completion of a post-war housing project that built more than 10,000 single-family homes. Archaeologist Manuel Esteve poses next to a Corinthian helmet discovered during an underwater excavation near Santorini, Greece, in 1938. A boy receives a new pair of shoes at an orphanage in Austria in 1946. The donation was organized by a child support organization in the post-conflict period. The scene illustrates the community solidarity that contributed to social recovery. Maharaja Birchandra Manikya, ruler of the princely state of Tripura in northeastern India, recorded what is considered the country's first photographic self-portrait in 1880. A family prepares Thanksgiving dinner in 1940 in the United States, gathering ingredients in the kitchen. Traditional dishes like turkey, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie were prepared days in advance to celebrate the harvest. Cindy Crawford poses alongside Israeli soldiers at Masada Fortress in 1992. The photograph was taken during her visit to the country to participate in a fashion event and cultural exchange in Tel Aviv. Members of the Women's Timber Corps pose in a forest clearing in the United Kingdom in 1944 during the Second World War, using axes and chainsaws to cut wood essential to the war effort. A flapper woman poses in a jazz club in Chicago in 1924, wearing a fringed dress and pearl accessories that reflect the innovative style of the 1920s. Steve Jobs introduces the Apple II during the first West Coast Computer Fair in San Francisco on April 16, 1977. The event brought together technology enthusiasts at the Moscone Convention Center to discover the microcomputer that featured color graphics. A 200-pounder Parrott cannon was installed at Fort Gregg on Morris Island, South Carolina, in 1865 during the American Civil Conflict. This 6.4-inch iron tube artillery model could fire explosive projectiles over 5,000 yards. A photo of Teresa of Lisieux dressed as Joan of Arc at the Carmelite convent in Lisieux, France in 1897. A rum vending machine was installed in Miami bars in the 1950s, allowing patrons to receive a shot of liquor by inserting metal tokens. A crowd gathered in Piazza Venezia in Rome in 1946 to celebrate the birth of the Italian Republic. The plebiscite held on June 2, 1946, decided the replacement of the monarchy with the new Republican regime. Mount Fuji seen through the periscope of the USS Trigger, SS-237 submarine during a war patrol on April 22, 1943. The image shows the snow-capped peak rising from the ocean, captured amid naval operations in the Pacific. A photograph of Lombard Street in San Francisco, California, was taken in 1975, showing the winding road lined with colorful Victorian houses and well-kept gardens. New York City's Swimobile was an amphibious bus launched in 1974 for sightseeing tours that traveled through the streets of Lower Manhattan and then sailed on the Hudson River. A London secretary showcases fashion trends in a photo studio in London in 1966. Wearing a fitted suit with a knee-length skirt, She presents accessories such as fine gloves and a printed scarf around her neck. Howard Hughes piloted the H-4 Spruce Goose seaplane during its only flight over Long Beach Harbor, California on November 2, 1947. A Bedouin man poses in the Sinai Desert, Egypt in 1938, displaying long braids that are part of his tribal identity and protect his scalp from the intense sun. A car emerges from the paint curing oven at the General Motors plant in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada in 1959. The vehicle received a hand-applied paint job before entering a curing tunnel with a temperature of about 320 degrees Fahrenheit to set the finish. An inaugural lecture took place at Lomonosov State University in Moscow on September 1, 1945, marking the resumption of academic activities after the end of the Second World War. A Boy Scout asks Huey Long for an autograph in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in 1934 during a political rally. Long, then a United States Senator, was interacting with supporters when the young man approached. George Hackenschmidt poses in a studio portrait in London in 1905 as one of the pioneers of modern weightlifting. Animators at Walt Disney Studios studied live Dalmatians in the studio in Burbank, California in 1961 to accurately capture their features and movements in the movie 101 Dalmatians. A powerful artillery piece fires during the conflict in France in 1918. This equipment operated at night in a forward position, with flashes lighting up the ground and alerting the support teams. Mao Zedong made his last public appearance at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing on April 14, 1976, during the annual session of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. A woman sits at the end of the area designated for mothers in a community shelter in Chicago, United States in the 1950s, holding her baby on her lap. Russian peasants transported a killed elk across a river in the Yenisei province in the early 20th century. They used a simple wooden sled attached to long poles to distribute the animal's weight and cross the strong currents. A luxury lawnmower with an air conditioning system was unveiled in Detroit, Michigan in 1954 by manufacturer Lawnmaster, offering unprecedented comfort for the operator. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.